And a very good morning to you. It's a very distracted OTB AM this morning because we have an influencer in our presence this morning. Owen, how are you? You've had a massive promotion overnight.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I've got hashtag ad just kind of tattooed on me at this point. Hashtag spawn and all those terms that influencers use.
And so you're getting paid loads and loads and loads. 300 grand, I believe, for today's Snapchatting and Instagramming. So
yes.
If anybody wants to read your Snapchat and Instagram stories, I can't believe we're using our platforms to promote. It seems like there's something dodgy going on here, but go on. Who are you?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to bring this up at the top of the show, but you, Julie, did it. I'm doing a day in the life. It's a series organised by Dublin City University for former students to go and show people what they do.
Is your life interesting enough for a full day?
It is definitely not. I've definitely enhanced.
Come on, that's great. Yeah, what do you?
The most exciting thing I did this morning was actually took a video of Pete on sound eating a yogurt, and that is genuinely the most exciting thing that's happened to me all week, watching Pete eat a yogurt.
And so you've organised for some of the biggest names in world sport to come in today. Yeah,
Míchael O'Muircheartaigh is going to come in. Cian Lynch is going to come in. So the fellow Ginger and the fellow Kerry man coming in. So they're supporting my cause. They're supporting my 300 grand earnings. So thank you to those people in particular for coming in.
But the long and short of it is go to DCU and you end up filming people eating yogurt.
Exactly, yeah. That's actually what I must do. I'm going to clip that and put that on the Instagram story right next.
There you go. All right. So it is a relatively busy show. Owen's already told you exactly what's coming up today. We've got Cian Lynch, we've got Míchael O'Muircheartaigh, and bring you to the sports page, but also that developing story about the playing field in Temple Oak Sing Street, which is the Gaelic Football Club, the hurling club Kevin's, who are Liberties based, play out there. That's the closest pitch they have to them, and a portion of land is being sold for development by Temple Oak Sing Street. You were out last night at the public meeting?
Public meeting in Griffith College last night, basically which was to explain to people the severity of this on a multitude of facets. The severity of what will actually happen to the playing capacity for Kevin's, what the development will do in terms of impacting the amount of training space, the amount of playing space for the kids there in the club, which is a club which has huge participation, which is an interesting one because Nicky Brennan was speaking at it last night and he was talking about his own experiences at home in Kilkenny, where the problem is not with green spaces, it is with actual human beings that they're down to 13 aside and stuff at some age groups because people are emigrating a mass depopulation in the country, whereas it is the exact opposite in Dublin 8, where they've got so many kids, so many people to play for their teams, but they don't have the green spaces, and any reduction in these green spaces, which have been referred to as gold dust by people in Kevin's GAA, and you can see why they say that, any loss of this land would be detrimental to those kids who are actually playing. So it's a huge issue. They outlined how much is going to be lost, what the implications of losing green spaces can do to the lives of children. They had John Lonergan, former governor of Mountjoy Prison, there last night, and they also did a fantastic study in terms of how deprived the Kevin's area is in terms of green space available to them. So we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show, but it's a story we've been covering, of course, since the Sports Capital grants came out a few months ago. This is a different story to that a little bit because it's a GAA story.
It all speaks to the same thing though, that if you are well established and middle class, you can get whatever you want from the government and you can find plenty of space. But if you are struggling with space or with ownership of, of your own facilities, then you can't get anything, basically.
Yeah, that point was made numerous times last night, very passionately as well. It is a group of people who are willing to fight tooth and nail for this. There is a possibility that this thing gets ugly in a little while. I mean, do they have to go to the courts with this sort of thing? Perhaps. At the moment, though, what they're looking for is a win-win situation where Kevin's GAA and Temple Oak Sing Street both come to an agreement around this development of lands, for which there are already plans. There's actual blueprint drawn up for the apartment blocks that are going to be built here. So it seems that it's a battle that's going to be very, very difficult to win, but it's one that they've got a lot of good people working hard to fight.
Okay, let's move on and bring you the morning's newspapers.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.
Okay, we're going to start this morning with the Irish Independent back page. Damien Fitzhenry speaking there. Leinster relegation is shame of hurling. He reckons that these are teething problems, really. I mean, when you drill down into the story, he basically is saying that he doesn't think that there should be a team relegated in Leinster, and that it's something that they'll work out over a period of time. Interesting story from Miguel Delaney there, that Spurs are interested in getting Gareth Bale back. I think that makes a lot of sense from Spurs' perspective, trying to sign somebody who will be a season ticket seller for the new stadium, and to finally remove that notion of them not being a team who are interested in spending money. Like, it feels like all of the penny pinching over the years from Daniel Levy has been about getting them to the point where they were able to compete, and now the Premier League is so profitable that they could spend money on Gareth Bale and actually make a load of money off that transfer in a way that wouldn't have been possible maybe even 5 years ago with the way the TV rights and also their own stadium situation. The other story there on the back of the Irish Independent is about Martin O'Neill saying that Championship football is no preparation for Ireland. It's a massive step up. It's incredible. You're talking about the opposition on Monday. The French players were athletic and lean and brilliant on the ball, and that's not the player, with respect, that young Brown is playing against every single week. This is just Alan Brown from Preston stepping up to face, Pogba and Griezmann and whoever it was that were playing for France. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in with Ireland at the moment. And I think at some point, do we just have to accept that it's going to be a while before Ireland can be competitive again?
Yeah, well...
Or do we look at Iceland and go...
a long time ago.
Well, why are Iceland successful? Why were Wales successful enough to the point where they were able to reach a semi-final of the Euros? Granted, they didn't qualify for the World Cup, but Iceland have backed up what they did at the Euros by qualifying for the World Cup. That's the problem with international football, is that, lower quality players in a good team with a uniformity of purpose and identity can overperform their relative league standing.
For sure, there is an element of talent, though. There is an element of uniformity of purpose when it comes to developing young players, and it seems that football has completely stood out as the only real national game where Iceland will big up their opportunities of bringing these players through to the very top level. We've looked at this before on the show, where the amount of actual, top-class facilities per capita in Iceland is outstanding. They've really put an effort in to make sure that if there is any bit of gold dust in the talent, around Iceland, that they will be nurtured and they will be brought to the next level as a footballer. Whereas at Wales, it kind of feels that there are competing sports and this is a once-in-a-lifetime generation. And not qualifying for the World Cup, by the way, is a bit of an underachievement for this Wales team. Every year that you have Gareth Bale and you don't qualify for a World Cup is an underachievement.
Yeah, it's like being Barcelona and not winning the Champions League when you've got Leo Messi in your team. Okay, so let's move on to the Times. This is the Times Ireland edition. O'Neill issues challenge to Ireland squad. It's effectively the same. If you look at the two teams, the calibre of the opposition and the choice we have, the players we have in the leagues they're playing in, I don't think it's a major surprise that we lost. Having said that, when we have the ball, we have to try and use it a bit better instead of hoofing it forward. He didn't say instead of hoofing it forward, but pictures of Serena Williams, the same picture basically on the back of the Irish Independent and the Times Ireland edition. And then Mark McCall, the news is through that Saracens have signed him and his backroom team up all the way to 2022. Some people thought that maybe he'd be in the running for the Joe Schmidt gig after the World Cup, but it never really felt like that was something that he was interested in. And he's gone on the record as saying that when you're in a situation like you are at Saracens, you have to stop and realise that this is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. And why do you always want to move? Why is always the next thing better automatically? And somebody else was quoted, and it was a good quote, as saying, for Mark McCall, it's not always all about him, which isn't necessarily the way that things roll at international level. You kind of need that giant ego.
The Mark McCall thing seems like a real 2015 story, doesn't it? When Leinster and Ireland weren't failing, but Leinster were failing, and I felt like we need to get some more of the expertise that's been nurtured from a rugby standpoint on this island back into this country, and Mark McCall was viewed as one of those people. 2 years, 3 years down the line, you're like, we don't really need Mark McCall anymore. Andy Farrell is going to become the next Joe Schmidt. Potentially Stuart Lancaster, if you manage to nurture some really good coaching talent in Leinster, could become the next Ireland coach. It's probably going to be Andy Farrell, though, at this point of view. So we don't need Mark McCall anymore. It's the long and short of it, really.
Or both of them. Who knows?
It's kind of like we've got a new friend now. We don't care about our former friend.
Yeah,
that's no
it's
longer
good that there's
cooler.
loads of people though, because who knows, the job after that could obviously be interesting and available from a 4-year cycle after that. After the World Cup in France, it is France, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then the World Cup
Remember,
after that's going to be
2023.
America, apparently. Okay, so the Irish Times next. This is, so we don't have a PDF of this one, so you're going to have to try and squint there. Clock is already ticking on Kerry's young guns. I'll come back to that in a minute. Fitzmaurice praises contribution of basketball coach Weldon. This is interesting. It's like a couple of years after Dublin got their basketball coach, Kerry have theirs. Every manager likes to believe they're bringing something different into the championship. Eamon Fitzmaurice is no exception. So obviously they had a raft of talented new youngsters come through last year, but they've also added a basketball coach. So the tactical nuances of Kerry against Dublin whenever they meet in this year's championship is going to be pretty impressive.
They might not meet. Sure, wasn't Nathan saying that Mayo? Oh no, he wasn't saying that. He was saying that Mayo would beat Kerry if they happened to meet. Mayo could probably just scupper the plans of Kerry versus Dublin yet again. So could Galway. So I wouldn't be guaranteed that we're going to get a Kerry-Dublin meeting this summer.
We would expect it to be in the All-Ireland final. Are they slated to meet in the final or semi-final?
In the final, if you assume they both top their Super 8 groups.
Yeah, well, that's just for this purposes of argument, and as opposed to
Futurism.
yeah, exactly. That's where they're supposed to.
Yeah, no, genuinely, yeah. If they top Super 8 groups, which you'd expect they would do given Mayo's struggles at the moment, it'll be a Kerry versus Dublin All-Ireland final. Okay,
and you think they're going to win the All-Ireland this year? I just want to get that on the record. You've been banging around, wondering, you haven't snapped this to your DCU buddies, but you think Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland this year?
That's because Johnny Cooper runs the actual account. But I do think Dublin are going to win the All-Ireland. I do think Kerry are the second best team and are best placed to beat them this year.
And are much closer than everybody else thinks.
Yes, I really do believe that Kerry have been downplayed beautifully, actually. I'm very happy with this. Well, not really, but part of me is fuming, actually, that Kerry have been written off to this point where...
It's a perfect situation.
It's perfect. It is a perfect situation.
Pissed off that they're getting written off, and yet you're delighted that they've been written off.
Yes, it's all the emotions in one. It's fantastic.
The perfect GAA scenario. It's like, they don't believe in us. Woohoo, they don't believe in us.
Like, some people would have had them as fourth favourites. Some people are giving Galway kind of a leg up on Kerry at this point. Some people are giving Tyrone a higher ranking than Kerry at the start of the season, which is clearly nonsense. Like, that being said, Kerry could put in a terrible performance this Sunday. They probably won't get knocked out, but they could win by only a couple of points and people will suddenly start to turn around. It would be even more perfect. Exactly, it would be even more perfect.
Imagine if somehow a scenario exists where somehow Cork are favourites for the Munster final. Or it's a pick'em game. Everybody's like, what's going on here?
You'll never guess what happened the last year. Kerry limped past Clare in a Munster Championship match.
They won the All-Ireland?
They won the All-Ireland 2014. Last year, they were limping for a little bit, but they pulled away in the end. 2014, there was columns written bemoaning the lack of talent coming through in Kerry and almost being fed up with how crap Kerry were, despite the fact that it was only June. It had only just crossed the middle of June, and people were saying that they were bored of the lack of having Kerry as the aristocrats of football. And then 4 months later, they were All-Ireland champions, so that made that the sweetest of all. Of course it did. There is an element of that again this year, but I think some people are wise to the fact. Who was it in last week who was saying that, Kerry are going to go a lot further than a lot of people think? I can't recall who that was, but I think they're right when they say that. I think they're the second best team in the country.
And you actually believe that the combination of youngsters that they have and experienced players is kind of perfect. So Darius, talk to us about Darius Collins, because that's kind of the point that kicked us off on this. The clock is ticking on Kerry's young guns. He's making the point that when he came through, nobody knew that much about him. He'll be grand in a couple of years. He's kicked a bit of ball under 21, and when he fills out and gets his man strength, he's going to be useful for us. Whereas now, David Clifford has a highlight reel, mostly from Croke Park, and with a bunch of different teams, so expectation level is stratospheric.
For sure. He makes one very valid point in his... He makes multiple valid points, but the best point he makes, Dara, today is that when you're playing minor football, there's just not a systemic approach to the way you approach minor football. It's a mercenary approach where you've got a different group of players every year almost, and you will play off-the-cuff football to a certain extent, far more than you would see in senior intercounty Gaelic football. These players have to adjust to playing in a system. Whether or not that system will suit them then is an entirely different matter. I watched David Clifford play against Clare in the Munster minor final last year when he was single marked for the entire match. They didn't put a second man on him. They brought a sweeper back who was completely ineffectual. But Clare single marked David Clifford for the entire game, and I think he scored a couple of goals and a handful of points. That has been the problem when the kind of feeling in your stomach when you've been watching David Clifford at minor level that he's been having it quite easy tactically. I'm not saying just not physically, but tactically he's had it very, very easy. They never even tried to double mark him in a Munster minor final, which is an absolutely shocking indictment of that management last year. So the very basics of management will improve when it comes to the opposition. The physicality will obviously improve. And when it comes to defensive tactics, they're going to be far more nuanced, far more highbrow than what anything he's ever seen. So it is, the talent is there, of course it is. How quickly can they adjust to being cogs in a system? That remains to be seen. So it's a good column, but it is interesting that the headline is "Clock is already ticking on Kerry's young guns." I mean, it tells you all you need to know about the pressure that's there. Yeah,
but at the same time, like, it's pressure that's only pressure because they've been really good, and there's been enough of them who have shown up in the league that you think, and with the background in under 21 and minor football, you think, okay, there's it's been a proper draft class. Effectively, this Kerry team is a completely different team from the last couple of seasons. They have a massive infusion of talent, and you're talking about Fitzmaurice with the basketball coach. He's obviously gone away and had a long, hard look at exactly what was happening and what Dublin were doing and what they're supposed to be doing. And they're coming with a different crew and potentially a different style of play. And when that happens, and when they do it so under the radar as they have been, it must be dangerous.
Of course it is. Like, I think a lot of respect has to go to Eamon Fitzmaurice for the way he's ruthlessly culled a number of his stalwarts over the past couple of years. Like, you're talking about 10 top players over the last 2 or 3 seasons that have retired or have been told, listen, you're not going to be part of the panel. Stalwarts is a little bit strong, but certainly people that you would have expected to be seeing game time in 75, 80 minutes in Croke Park against Dublin. So he's very clearly, deliberately gone out of his way to make sure that this is going to be a new Kerry team. He's going to, like he has said to himself, I'm not going to rest on my laurels, which is the 2014 team, some of the talent which I unearthed myself, and we were going to proceed with them and, you know, kind of be a bit stubborn to the infusion of minor talent. I'm going to take this minor team and they're going to be the ones who dictate who's going to be playing the game. I think it's an open-minded approach.
Kerry are best price 5-1 to win the All-Ireland, right? That's
really?
Yeah.
That's a good bet, but I do think, and it's not being kind of cliche Kerry, I do think it is a year too soon for them. I do think they have a hell of a chance of causing an upset against Dublin, and it's fantastic
they probably are 5-1 in an All. If the All-Ireland final is tomorrow, well, okay, so it wouldn't be tomorrow. You'd have seen exactly how well they were playing and who's good and whether or not Clifford's made it and where they're playing James and like what the team situation is. Would they be as big as 5-1 in a All-Ireland final against Dublin?
Probably not. You see, the thing is, it's worth having that bet now, because if they get to the All-Ireland final, they're obviously going to be 2 or 3-1.
There is another bet that you can have. Senior Football Provincial to win the Provincial and All-Ireland double in 2018 with Buzz. Kerry are 7-1.
Well, you may as well take that.
That's a much better bet.
May as well take that. It's like they're obviously Cork are a far better team than last year. I think it's a year too soon for Cork to beat Kerry, and I think it's a year too soon for Kerry to beat Dublin. That's how I see it going this year. I see Kerry getting to the All-Ireland final and losing to Dublin. Like at the same time, when it comes to a one-off game, the fact that they're not in Dublin side of the draw when it comes to the Super 8, assuming they win Munster, is a fantastic thing. In a one-off game in Croke Park, the last time they played them in Croke Park, they beat them. Granted, it was only the league, but it was still a league final. It was late enough to read into it a little bit. They have got over that hoodoo to a certain extent because of how unbelievably happy they were that day, that 100% they have a chance because it'll be a one-off game. They don't have to play them in the Super 8 and then potentially again in the All-Ireland.
We had James O'Donoghue and Colin Cooper in together in studio yesterday. We're going to play that out tomorrow. We were talking about where, afterwards we were just chatting, like, where does he play this year and what is the starting lineup of forwards? When you start to go through the forwards that Kerry have, they have an unbelievable array of talent available to them at the moment. And if you were to think about that properly, and if they can find a way to utilise talent like O'Donoghue and Clifford and Sean O'Shea and Paul Ganey and Donaghy, like, and that's just, somebody's definitely going to be on the bench, but like all of a sudden, if they're fit, and it's a huge if, but if they were all to be fit for most of the year, like, that's the best forward line in the country.
Well, like I'm all up for playing up that forward line, but is it better than Dublin's? Really?
Well, no Connolly this year. No Connolly to ride to the rescue.
I don't really care about no Connolly. Like,
well, they needed him last year for the last 35 minutes of the entire season. It came down to having a fully fit Dermot Connolly to be able to come on and like be smart enough to win that game.
Like, you're talking about Mannion and O'Callaghan versus Ganey and O'Donoghue. Again, Ian O'Donoghue better on their day, potentially. But I keep going back to this point. Paul Mannion is going to be the player that we turn around in September and say, crap, we didn't realise he could be this good. We all knew he could be good. I mean, he was starting for Jim Gavin, but...
When was O'Donoghue, when was James O'Donoghue last available, fully fit and had a full season? When he was Footballer of the Year, right?
Trying to think. Probably was. You're talking a full season, June to September.
And so Mannion is sensational, and like we have seen him, the absolute peak of him. He's got pace and power that few other forwards in the country have that combination. But like, let's see him be fully fit for an entire year, and is that better than the guile that you get with James O'Donoghue?
Yeah, there's definitely an argument to be made there that Kerry are better in the forwards. There is no argument that Dublin are better in the backs, and that is what will ultimately win Dublin the All-Ireland this year. It's as simple as that. Kerry just aren't, or they haven't proven enough, particularly in that full back line, to be defensively sound enough. The half-back line can be outstanding. It is one of their best lines on the pitch, but the Andy Moore nightmares will always give us cause for consternation going into this summer.
Isle Cody says, don't forget Sean O'Shea. We didn't, because obviously he's been sensational and he's their number 11 for the year.
He probably will be. Like, we will put the point to James O'Donoghue about him potentially being 11 and whether or not he sees a future for him there. But I think it's going to be Sean O'Shea this year for sure.
Gooch was definitely saying it's Sean O'Shea. Just a couple of quick points from tweets from yesterday's show. James Dunn says, I went on a Path to Freedom binge last night after the show yesterday. Top class. You need to do a Path to Freedom binge.
Okay, let's do it.
And then Path to Freedom, your best show to come out of Ireland. Keep love, hate, also good. My brother served Jeremy, the posh bloke, in the bar in New York. Gave him the big fan. He replied, thanks. That's the guy from Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey is very popular. No Path to Freedom though. He was blown away and thrilled. So there you go.
Okay, that Path to Freedom, is it on Netflix?
I doubt it.
I don't have Netflix anyway, so I don't know why I asked that.
Is that your pitch for getting free Netflix from the Netflix people?
Yeah, please, Netflix people, you know where I'm at.
He's an influencer now, so you've got to give it to him.
Yeah, hashtag Netflix, hashtag Spawn. Is that all your newspapers, or do you have more to talk about?
Did I have another one? I probably did have a couple more, actually. Yeah, so the Examiner on the road to somewhere. Leaside trip holds no fears for Limerick, insists Kylie. This is going to be, I think this is probably the hurling game of the weekend. Obviously, given the injuries that Waterford have suffered, that's not exactly sticking my neck out. But Limerick sensational. I'm going to speak with Cian Lynch a little bit later on in the show. And then another interesting Kieran Shannon column on the back of that. It's one of the cruelties of sport. The higher you go, the greater the scrutiny. This is basically on the back of LeBron dragging the Cleveland Cavaliers through to his 7th finals in a row, or his 8th finals? 7th? 8th. So 8 now. And making the point that every time he loses, people hold it against him as a reason why he's not as good as Michael Jordan. But there were years that Jordan didn't make the finals, and so he gets a free pass for those years. Like, he reached 6 finals, won 6, and so therefore he's better than somebody who reaches 8 finals and loses 6 potentially. It's Joe Montana, Tom Brady. Tom Brady has reached 7 Super Bowls, won 5, lost 2. Montana was 4-0, and so therefore Montana's better because he never lost Super Bowl. It's like, it's not really how it works. The silver medal is also important.
Yeah, I think the Brady-Montana debate is a little bit more clear-cut though, isn't it? I think it's hard to argue against Brady on 100%,
that one. I think, even as a Niners fan. But the other thing there was making the point that Mayo obviously have been relevant and have been in the arena and have actually tried to win All-Irelands. He draws a comparison between Derry and Meath, who were at a fairly similar level to Mayo when James Horan took over, and lo and behold, Mayo still where they are, still relevant, still an interested party when it comes to the All-Ireland series. But
it's a good point. You've only got to go back 7 years until you actually find Mayo fading into irrelevance.
Yeah,
really. Like, I can remember watching them in Croke Park in 2011, and they were terrible. I wasn't even nervous when that game. No, Kerry beat them in 2011.
No, but Longford beat them in a qualifier.
That was
Don O'Mahony.
2000 and
Don O'Mahony's last year. It's the first year before. Was
2010.
It was the year before.
Yeah.
It was Longford, wasn't it?
Longford, yeah.
Pictures of Mohamed Salah going through Valencia Airport. He's gone to Spain. They have the best medics in the world in Spain to prepare for the World Cup. I would like to go to Spain. I'm not feeling very well today. Maybe I could go to Spain and get whatever it is that Mo Salah's getting, and I would come in tomorrow and I'd be happy to go to work.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to go to work anyway. But get in touch with us here. Drop us a tweet at @OffTheBallAM.
On the back of the Herald this morning, the headline says, "We have to stop the rot." That's Shane Duffy's quote there. The defender is aiming to end his losing streak. Good news if you're a Dublin hurling fan. Conal Keaney is back and he's fit. They're playing Offaly this weekend, a crucial game really. The loser of that game is likely to get relegated from the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. Dublin, you'd make them relatively healthy favourites. The 35-year-old back in tow again. It's his first appearance since that brilliant performance really against Kilkenny in the first round of the Leinster round robin. He's in excellent form and really hope for all 35-year-olds out there that they could get back playing, and it's also a good endorsement for the old sabbatical as well. He's come back looking like a fresh man.
Dublin 7-1 on.
So, oh wow.
Yeah.
Right, I don't think it would be that healthy.
Yeah. It has to be, right? Offaly faded badly.
They were terrible last weekend, of course. But
3 lads sent off.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
It's 7-1 on, wow. On the back of the Mirror this morning, it is "You won't be sorry." Blues told to pay £7 million compensation, but Guardiola reckons he's worth it. That is, of course, the Napoli manager who Chelsea been told to pay up for. Napoli boss, who of course he is currently the Napoli boss, Pep, is insisting you won't be sorry. Napoli have signed sorry.
Napoli have appointed Carlo Ancelotti.
Sorry, yeah, he's gone from Napoli.
Yeah, and yet he still has 2 years left on his deal. It's like, what? Why do you have to pay compensation? You've already replaced him.
It's just, it doesn't matter what personal preference is. There's just a wheel here. It's like Ancelotti is coming right back to Chelsea. Sarri will go on somewhere else, and Ancelotti will be in there next season or the season after.
Getting
probably
closer.
2 years.
Definitely getting closer.
On the back of the Star, it's third time lucky. Guardiola said to finally land his man Mahrez. That'd be an interesting signing for Manchester City this year, because I don't really feel they need Riyad Mahrez at this point. I don't really feel Riyad Mahrez is deserving of a transfer to the Premier League's best team. You've also got Pat's the job for Frankie. Frank de Dettori is looking forward to a massive run in Saturday's Epsom derby on Hazapur after taking some advice from Pat Smullen. So, Frankie de Dettori and Pat Smullen have had a conversation. Therefore, Frankie de Dettori is now an improved jockey, apparently. Jose moves for Dallo. So they're looking to capture their first signing of the summer. They're looking to sign this guy, Diogo Dallo, who's a right back. So the full back issue at Manchester United looking to be...
He's a kid. He's like, hasn't had a full season as a first team player at Porto, and they're spending 20 million quid on him. Oh, that's the buyout clause. So
yeah, 19 years old. The other story as well that's doing the rounds in GAA circles, the headline here is Dacia drained by KO blows. Waterford are screwed. They've got they've got a hospital full of people waiting to get back onto the pitch, and with suspensions as well at this point, they're in big trouble. If they manage to get out of that Munster group, it'll be an achievement in itself. On the back of the Sun, it is I want you to score and win, Ireland versus USA. So that's, it's Uncle Sam and it's Uncle Martin O'Neill really. There's not much more needs to be said about that. The scoring issues have been well documented at this point. We don't have a goal scorer. Can they score against the United States of America at home on Saturday?
Also not going to the World Cup, the USA.
So yeah, it's a drab encounter between two sides who really don't care. They just want to get on.
You'll have tickets to give away on tomorrow's show, Owen.
But that's... it's the Republic of Ireland. Let's try and build this up into an amazing spectacle.
8 minutes past 8.
Bruce Springsteen is playing or something like that.
Is that it? What's happening? Why is it 8 minutes past 8? Does anyone know why it's kicking off at 8 minutes past 8?
I actually don't know. I presume there is some sort of sensible reason for that.
Dan had a reason on Twitter, which we're going to dig out.
It's tennis leading the way in the UK pages this morning. On the back page of The Guardian, it's courting attention. That's Kyle Edmund, who cruised into the second round of the French Open yesterday. He beat Alex de Minaur, but Serena Williams provided the highlight. She was back in action yesterday. She's on the front of the Daily Telegraph sports section. Serena's return. Katsuya, the tennis legend, wins Grand Slam comeback match. And
also the FA standby Sterling and gun tattoo controversy. Headline you never thought you'd read on the front of the Telegraph. My favourite tweet about the whole thing yesterday was... a picture of the tattoo and a picture of Peter Crouch. And I was like, oh, he's got a tattoo of Peter Crouch. It was Crouchy doing his robot dance. Celebrating it. It was like, had the gun been touched up in the tattoo, because it was like exactly like Peter Crouch.
It was amazing. There was a great shout by whoever spotted that on Twitter. Twitter was actually a strangely beautiful place yesterday, because everybody was roundly supporting Raheem Sterling, and there was a lot of funny content that actually didn't divide the internet, except for one Piers M, who
there it is. There, look. You're like,
it's an amazing chat.
Has it been touched up? I mean, I don't think it has. It's like it's almost exactly the same. No, it hasn't been touched up.
Just looks like Peter Crouch wearing a flat cap. That's all really. We need more tattoos of footballers doing celebrations.
That would be class. Who would you get?
Probably just I'd get I suppose the 3-pronged attack of Robbie Keane's cartwheel and somersault. So one of the first tattoo would be 3 tattoos. The first one would be the cartwheel.
Triptych, if you want.
Exactly.
A bacon style.
Yeah, the second one would be the little roly-poly, and then the third one would be him
shooting.
Yeah.
Oh, gun controversy.
I'd be under the sock. I'd be smarter than Raheem Sterling.
You should do that for your Instagram story later.
Yeah,
the celebration or the tattoos? Go and get the tattoos for your Instagram story.
Oh yeah, good shout.
That would definitely be. We'll chip in a $5 each, I'd say.
Oh, nice one. That should do the trick.
Right, don't forget the Off the Ball Euro 88 Roadshow takes place in Vicar Street next Thursday, June the 7th. John Giles, Ronnie Whelan, Kevin Moran and Ray Houghton. Ticket details are over at offtheball.com/events. Go check it out. That's going to be a pretty amazing night. Ronnie Whelan, the most famous shin in the history of Irish football. Ray Houghton's celebration in that game wasn't as iconic as his celebration in USA 94. He does the little roly-poly thing. Maybe that's where Robbie Keane developed his from, is it?
Maybe, I'm not sure. Is that the tattoo you're getting is one of Ray Houghton's celebrations?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. Or, there's probably one of... my microphone has fallen off there, yeah.
So,
falling down my jumper. What a day I'm having.
Yeah, I've been told to talk here because nobody can hear you. So, the good old classic microphone falling down the jumper. What's wrong with you? Are you ill?
I'm a little bit ill.
Is it contagious?
Hopefully.
Is it contagious through live streams? Should people be worried?
Yeah, be careful. The lurgy is coming for you wherever you're watching this on youtube.com/offtheball, at offtheball on Twitter, or of course on facebook.com/offtheball. And make sure you turn on your subscriptions, your notifications, so that whenever we're ill, we can come and find you. Now, as part of their announcement that they will be sponsoring the GAA Hurling All-Ireland Senior Championships for an 8th year, Centra launched their hashtag We Are Hurling campaign last week and brought with them a host of stars. Limerick's Cian Lynch popped into the studio for a great chat. Limerick had a week off last weekend after opening the Munster Round Robin Championship with a brilliant win against Tipperary. This week they faced John Myler's Cork. Here's how we get on with Cian. All right, Cian Lynch is here with us. Cian, how are you?
Great, no?
Not a bad week.
No, got off to a good old start, so set it on the right roads and stuff.
Tell me, when did you become a midfielder at senior inter-county level?
I don't know, it was only recent enough. I'd say it was kind of my last resort. Everything else wasn't working for me, but no, I don't know. They're in the league, or in the challenge matches before the league, kind of tried me out there, so I kind of like it. It's a sense of change, you know.
And did you have the whole league campaign in midfield, or was it kind of...
Yeah, the only one I didn't, I was in the forwards when we played Antrim, but Antrim there. So I played all the games in midfield, so something different, you know. Playing the forwards or centre forward or half forward for the last 6 or 7 years, you kind of... Nice bit of change to see another side of the pitch.
What's the difference?
Jeez, there's a lot more running to be done inside midfield, you know. And the only thing you kind of notice about midfield, the game can kind of bypass you know. You kind of, the puck out's going over and back, and you could miss one, the break go against you, so it's about being patient,
Yeah.
You know.
Enjoyable? Or not? Does it take a while to get used to it?
It took a while to get used to it, yeah, but as I said, you could go games there where you mightn't, in the first half against Tip the other day, I'd say I touched the ball twice, you know, just nothing broke to me. I was running kind of headless at times, you know. But no, it's something different. I like it. So far, so good. Anyway,
do you have a specific brief? Are you supposed to be picking up ball in a certain part of the field, or are you the old school traditional free running left corner forward, right corner back?
To be honest, I'm kind of try and read the break is a hard thing to do. You know, for ball, the leg put up the hurling, it could break to your left or right. It's just kind of your reaction, really. You know, you could be lucky and 5 or 6 balls could drop to your feet.
Yeah,
could bring you into a game.
But they're not trying to say that you need to be an extra defender, or we want you picking up ball kind of in the half-back line.
They're not saying you have to stand there for this period of time. You have to go out and try and get your own ball and work hard, and you're not going to get on unless you work for it. You know?
Because there's the other type of midfielder who kind of marks their opponent in midfield. That didn't look like that was either part of your job.
Yeah, well, there will be times there where you'll have to man up and pick up your men, but the way the kind of game worked against Tip, it was kind of more of breaks. You know, kind of the fellow American could be gone another way and he could get on the break.
Yeah.
Whereas if I was where he was, I could have got it. But you know, it's kind of look at the draw in another sense, you know.
Yeah.
Is that reading of the game a natural thing, do you think?
To get on the break,
yeah, to kind of know when it
there's about reading it, reading the break. Yeah,
you can obviously teach that, but to a certain extent, it is a mental quality. Obviously, I mean, is it something that you have to kind of almost just have without being taught it?
Yeah, you can say that, but then there's times there where you might think the ball's going to land somewhere, but then with the way hurling's gone now, it's so quick. You try and react. It's more reaction, and kind of adapt to what's happening rather than thinking it's going to go a certain way. You have to kind of adapt because it could go anywhere, you know.
I guess it's kind of different as well. Like you've mentioned, having to go after your own ball as well. But even just from a kind of a confidence thing, there is always going to be a constant supply if you're playing corner forward. It's like, get the ball to Cian and he'll put the ball over the bar, whereas that's not the case anymore. You're a different link man, and I guess when it comes to confidence, if you're not playing well, trying to build that confidence back up is a harder thing because of simply less possession.
Yeah, it's huge. Like, you know, as I said, in midfield, the ball actually might bypass you for 20 minutes in the first half, or even 20 minutes in the second half, but it's more of a mental thing, like, to keep yourself going and keep gambling on the break, like, and luckily enough, it can pay off at times, but if it doesn't, like, that's just the way of the game, you know.
There was a bunch of you who came through that successful under-21 team who are now in the senior team. Does that help? Because, like, you obviously been around the senior panel for a while now, and some of your teammates are kind of just getting there, but, like, instead of it just being you and a couple of others at training sessions, suddenly there's a whole load of you, I presume, who are there, who are kind of setting the pace a little bit.
Yeah, well, like, it's kind of the transition really from minor 21s into senior panel. Like, it's not as easy, you know. People think it can happen like that, but it's taken us a long time to actually break into senior panels. Like, but without the experienced lads like Seamus Hickey, Tom Condon, you know, James Ryan down through the years, it wouldn't have been as kind of, there wouldn't have been that fluency in getting into the panel. But it does make a massive difference. Like, the lads you kind of grow up with playing with, it's kind of go and train with the lads you've played all the way up along, so it makes it, you're kind of more comfortable.
Even from your own perspective, like, because you did come in young and early, and there was a bit of pressure and a bit of talk, obviously, about you joining the panel. But when you look around this year and you see that there's 5 or 6 faces that you actually know, like, I guess it feels a little bit like that's part of the difference between you come in and you start in the forwards, and it's like we're kind of sneaking them in, and there's a tradition of, like, young lads getting snuck in, or, you know, like DJ gets named as a goalkeeper and then eventually gets in as a corner forward. Owen Kelly gets in as a corner forward, too young before his time, and then actually does really well. But, like, you were kind of the same. It was like, oh, you know, we're just getting him in there now at the moment. Oh, it's only corner forward. But actually what they really want to do is to get you on the ball as much as possible, and it's easier to do that when you're walking in and going, all right, lads, how you doing? I know everybody here.
Yeah, it is that sense of comfort, like, you know, as you said, with lads you're kind of after growing up with, lads you have to play with, so you're actually going out and even you're surrounded by the lads you've played with up along, which is huge. Like, but as I said, like, we got a great start Sunday, but who knows, like, come next Saturday against Cork, could be a different story completely, like, you know.
I have something when it comes to Limerick, and you talk about these great young teams. There's obviously great competition there between places and stuff, and that's why that growth is enhanced a little bit. But also, when you look at the very fibre of Limerick, it's always talked about as just a great sporting place, and the fact that there's GAA going up against rugby and soccer, but rugby mainly is, I'm not going to call it the enemy of Gaelic games, obviously, but it's a huge competitor. So from an officiating point of view, or from officials that are involved in the games, from coaches, there's a huge onus on them to coach well, to make sure the kids stay with them, and I guess that coaching is there all the way through, right?
Yeah, it is. In fairness to Limerick, they've had the academy that's kind of run there the last few years, and all our kind of age group came through it. It's just about keeping lads together, keeping the teams kind of bonded, keeping from 14s, 15s, 16s to minor and on to 21s level. And it has kind of benefited us at 21s level, like, you know, winning the 2 21s, but it's just getting that transition to senior level is the hardest thing, like, you know. But it's hard to compete with the rugby and the soccer in the city, like, because as Limerick is a sporting city, like, you know, it was running for the sporting capital of the world, like, so it does kind of hinder a lot of lads. Like, you even see, I was playing with a lad there underage, Stephen Fitzgerald, a great hurler, like, but he's making it in rugby now, which is unreal because he could have gone either way, you know. So we kind of have to work hand in hand too, like, you know, lads that might make it in hurling, there's rugby there and there's soccer there, so it's massive. The city is brilliant.
Did you play everything when you were young?
Me?
Yeah.
I played soccer, and I actually played a bit of rugby underage, but it was always hurling. Like, it was always hurling that's going to come to the top at the end, I'd say, because it's kind of the family tradition, you know.
What position did you play in rugby?
Jeez, I don't know. I kind of just got the ball and ran headlessly, like, stay away from the tackles. But no, I only played under 10s, 11s, and 12s, like. But I didn't really have a clue. I was kind of throwing forwards and backwards, and I was going with it.
What year were you born?
96.
Okay, so you missed the absolute peak of the Clare-Limerick rivalry. You just born around that time.
96, I think. I was born for the 96 period, but I remember 94 was probably the one that kind of really messed up, didn't it?
Yeah.
Looking back at this, the kind of one that a lot of lads talk about, but like, there's great tradition in Limerick, like, it's just about capitalising on top of it, you know.
And Kieran Carey's point, I presume, is kind of this big moment in the family history, is it? Is it?
I've seen it a few times. I've even listened to Míchael there talking today, kind of remember looking at the video on YouTube, and he does the commentary of it. But yeah, it was a great point now, but come here, that was 96, like, do you know?
Yeah, it's time for you guys to make your own.
Time to move on ourselves and try and drive on for us, like.
Yeah, no, totally. Owen said on the show on Monday that you were like Billy Elliot turning into Rambo this weekend.
Corner forward to midfield.
Who's worse, like?
Exchanging the silkiness for, I think it was a brute force or something, was I think the point I was trying to make.
I don't know. She's a good combination there now,
it
isn't
is, yeah. Which one would you rather be?
Billy Elliot. Well, Billy Elliot. Rambo's a big fat guy at this stage. He's about 100. So.
Don't know. Billy Elliot was elegant in fairness to him, so we'll go up Billy Elliot for the time being.
That's a good answer.
But that physicality is something that is different. Like you are running at like 3/4 of a sprint for much longer, and also you're just more open to hits. I suspect people are lining you up for much longer, much further out.
That's where hurling's gone now, like, you know. It's kind of the speed of it and the strength of players, like, you know. You can see some of the size of lads that were out at the house there today, like, you know, Gro McInerney, massive men, like, you know.
Big lad, yeah.
Big lad. I wouldn't like him running at me, like, but just shows where it's gone. You know, you have to kind of build yourself up. And
did you do all that over the last kind of couple of years, or are you kind of still in the middle of that?
Kind of getting built up and stuff. Yeah, geez, because my first year on the panel I was only about 76 kg, like, whereas now I'm about 85 or 6, so
yeah,
it is huge. But then a lot of lads can kind of focus on it too much then and forget the actual the speed and the hurling side of it, you know.
And how do you do that? Like, what is that?
Like, we have a great fella involved with Joe O'Connor, strength and conditioning, so he kind of lays it down there for us, and all we have to do is just follow what he tells us, like, you know.
Yeah.
So it's straightforward enough, but once you don't lose sight of the speed and the speed of hurling, like.
Because you guys have won underage, is it easier enough for you to buy into all that kind of stuff and say, well, this is what it is? Like previous generations who might not have had that success are coming in and going, well, do I really want to put all my time and effort and commitment in? Yeah. You know, it seems like you guys actually have a proper chance of establishing Limerick as a Division 1A team and All-Ireland contenders over the next couple of years in a way that maybe a bunch of the older lads on the panel, they were thereabouts for a short period and then it faded away again.
Yeah, like, it's all down to belief, like, you know. It's all about, even at minor level and 21s level, it's about believing that we're going out playing and we're as good as teams are playing, you know. It's about continuing at the senior level, even playing tip the other day. Like, we went out and knew we were up against it, like playing Tipperary, but it's about getting over that line and getting over that hurdle that's kind of been in the way for years, like, you know.
Because there was a few minutes after they scored the goal to equalise where they look like they're coming back into the game and they still have the cavalry to come off the bench. Yeah. Very big names, all-stars, hurlers of the year. And it seemed like in previous years a Limerick team might have folded at that point.
Yeah.
And there was a 3-minute period where you think, oh, geez, they better get back into this here. And then you just did. And it was almost as if normal service was resumed.
Yeah, it's just about keeping the head down, like, you know, no matter what the game is, if it's a first round of the league or first round of the championship, we've just been told to keep the heads down and keep plugging away and nothing changes, like, you know. If you're up 5 points or down 5 points, just keep to the process and keep the head down.
Well, Cian, great stuff. Congratulations on everything so far. Thanks. Best of luck with the rest of the season.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Cian Lynch with us a little earlier in the week to promote the launch of Centre's campaigns this year. Follow the hashtag We Are Hurling for more details. Look, he's just an interesting character. As I said, I'm all in on Cian Lynch this year. I think that I hope that Limerick are going to have a breakout year, and I hope that they're going to be one of those teams who reaches an All-Ireland semi-final on merit and doesn't underperform when they get there, because if Limerick were to suddenly be a force in this championship, then boom, we've got ourselves an entire year-long proper deep competition.
I think they will. I think the way you're looking at it now, it's going to be Limerick, Tipperary and Cork that get through from Munster, right? That Clare and Waterford are going to not make it. Maybe riding Waterford off a little bit too much, a little bit too soon, given, well, personnel is the most important thing in any sport. But can they go beyond the depths of what is required from personnel, from their top players, to actually find the team spirit that got them to an All-Ireland final last year and so close to an All-Ireland the year before? I can't see it happening, so I do think Limerick by default are going to make it. And that's not, using the term by default, sometimes sounds like a bit of an injustice, because they will deserve it.
I'm just not sure. I think I can't tell now if I was worried that Cork were flaky, and for 70 minutes plus 35 they were like, wow, this Cork team were not flaky at all, and then they were very flaky. They were like old chipping paint flaky in the second half against Tipperary, and you just are a little bit concerned that what happens if that flakiness continues on for them for the next while?
I think Cork are going through. I think Cork are making the Munster final. I'm not sure will they win the Munster final, but I think they're going to the Munster final. I think with Cork on day one, you start to say to yourself, wait a minute, I forgot about these young players. I forgot that they had all this talent because we've been so obsessed with Galway and Waterford for the last 6 months or so that we completely forgot about Cork and the stacked team that they have in terms of great young players. But then last week, you're like, wait, I forgot how young they actually are. I forgot that they still have a way to go in terms of developing that maturity and potentially developing that edge, which was a little bit lacking on Sunday. Did they have the ruthlessness to completely kill off Tipperary when it was really required? I'm not so sure. The talent is there, no question about it. Another year or two of maturity and Cork will be in an All-Ireland final.
Are we all assuming that Tipperary are back and that they're going to accidentally find their best team here, and suddenly, because of the superstar forwards that they have and the fitness that they're coming into, that actually it's all begun to work out perfectly for them and they're now on that unstoppable momentum?
Well, Cork will certainly be hoping that that's the case. Cork will certainly be hoping that they just managed to not lose against the start of Tipperary season, which occurred after half-time on Sunday. Like, are they back? I'm not so sure they are. Like,
I think Cork would rather Tipperary were dead and there's no prospect of them meeting them again in the championship later on.
Well, I mean, in terms of when they look back on Sunday, they would rather view it as a Tipperary comeback rather than a Cork bottle job. I think it's a bit of both at this juncture, because I don't think Tipperary are anywhere near their peak. It's a terrifying lineup, Tipperary. There is no forward line in the country that comes anywhere close to the Tipperary forward line. Maybe Galway's in terms of their talents, but Tipperary's is just, it's a loaded deck. Like, it's incredible. Like, we were talking about it with Shane on Monday, that maybe is there too much of the same thing going on in that forward line where they're just all outrageously good scorers?
I don't think so.
There's no such thing as that.
Yeah, well, obviously there'll be far more analysis of this on Friday's hurling show. Tip and Waterford throw in at 4 o'clock on Sunday. At 7 o'clock on Saturday evening, it's Cork against Limerick. That game isn't on TV, is it? There's no little TV icon beside it. Jeez, I hope that game's on TV. I'll check that for you in a minute, but it's on Sky. Okay, great, it's on Sky. Wexford Galway is also on Sky in that game's on Sunday?
Saturday as well.
Saturday, okay. Fermanagh Monaghan is on BBC and
that's Sunday.
And RTE.
Yeah, Sunday, 2 o'clock. Why didn't they show Kerry?
Well, because it's going to be a 27-point mullering.
I'm joking.
Dan Shanahan was on last night talking about Waterford's chances to Adrian. Obviously, Waterford are absolutely beset by injuries. They also have a suspension heading into the game on Sunday. They are massive odds against to win the match. Tyler Burke has broken his collarbone. Dara Fives and Barry Coughlin are all out, plus the 3 starters that they didn't have the first day out against Clare aren't going to make it, it looks like, at this point for the game, which means no Austin Gleeson, obviously, Park Mahoney as well, also a huge doubt around that one, and Noel Connors, and Kevin Ward suspended. That's all your all-stars and all your best players. It's like, how can we possibly survive this? But Dan isn't throwing the towel in just yet.
I suppose we kind of rough started the league. We went back a bit later, to be honest with you, Adrian, and plus, I suppose we won 2 games in the league. Other teams only won one more than us in the league, if you look at it.
Yeah.
They did. Right, granted, we were beaten in the playoff by Cork in the relegation battle, but again, we'd won 2 games, or the teams that won the league, they only won 3 games. So, so it wasn't that bad of a league. Obviously, getting relegated was poor. But we went away, then we backed our clubs, and we had a great 3 or 4 weeks going into the championship, and everything was coming right. But injuries then last Sunday, especially Ty Buck getting injured at centre back, like you had to move Dara, who was going well at wing back, and obviously Noel Connors run off as well. Barry Coughlin in the middle of the second half, it happened in any other team, they'd be struggling too, Adrian.
It's an incredible injury list, and some of them are not going to turn around all that quickly, which must be a huge concern for you.
Yeah, I'm looking, to be honest with you, Adrian, I'm looking at Ty, Dara, Barry and Kevin are definitely out for next week, and you have question marks over Noel and Morris Shanahan, Austin Gleeson and Paddy Mahoney, so that's 8 players of last year's All-Ireland final panel, but look, we have other lads that can step up to the mark, to be honest with you, it's not an excuse or anything like that. We'll go down train tonight, assess the injuries, assess who we'll have for the weekend, and drive it on for there.
There's a real chance this is a lost year for Waterford, and that's really unfortunate because it looked like it was gearing up to be Derek McGrath's final season. I hope this isn't how it ends. somehow they all decided to give it one last year when there is an opportunity for everybody to come in. I mean, look, we're writing them off here simply by virtue of the fact that they've had so many injuries and they are such key players. And Tipperary came so good in the second half last week that they are massive odds-on favourites to win that game, and you can see why.
Yeah, maybe Derek McGrath shouldn't have alluded to the fact that this might be his last year. Of course, he couldn't have seen these injuries coming. And at the same time, we've now got all the ingredients for what would be one of the most amazing hurling seasons ever if Waterford managed to get out of this group.
Yeah.
And if they manage to get themselves back to the All-Ireland final again, it would be truly astonishing at this point. And you know, I think from a neutral perspective, it's very hard to dislike any of the teams in Munster, but the team that's hardest to dislike is obviously Waterford, and this just makes them even more likeable. This just means the country is right behind Waterford at this point. We would love to see them get out of this Munster group. It's a great story already, and it would be an even greater story if they managed to do it without all that talent.
Yeah, hopefully they can cobble together a team that's good enough to compete against Tip at the weekend. As we mentioned a little earlier on, Centre did announce this week that they're going to be sponsoring the GAA Hurling Senior Championship for an 8th year, and they launched their hashtag We Are Hurling campaign. A number of GAA stars were obviously at the launch, but none shines brighter than the legendary Míchael O'Muircheartaigh. You'll enjoy this.
All right, it is time for a very special guest. Míchael O'Muircheartaigh is with us this morning. Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Good morning. Yeah, it's a little after the morning now in some places.
The secrets of slightly recorded live internet TV, Míchael.
Oh, yeah.
But look, when we heard you were coming in, there was one story that I was really hoping that you would tell us. I've seen you speak before about the very beginnings of sports broadcasting in Ireland and how the GPO was involved and how Croke Park was involved, and I just thought it was a really fascinating story.
Well, it goes back to when the first radio station was set up in Ireland. It went on the air on the 1st of January 1926. And strangely enough, the first voice that went out on it was Douglas Hyde, even though he wasn't to become really famous until he became the first president of Ireland in 1938. But he was a well-known Gaelic poet. He was from Roscommon, Church of Ireland man, great man for the Irish language. He was the first. I think it went on air maybe for at most 3 hours a day, and then silence with the rest. Until somebody got an idea. You know, I've always, since hearing this story first time, a great believer in listening to ideas. And this man's idea, he was working in the station, not too many working there. And he decided himself, we have equipment that will make it possible on Sunday next to have a man in Croke Park that would talk about the hurling final, semi-final between Galway and Kilkenny. He didn't consult anybody, went out, got his bicycle, cycled up to Croke Park, met whoever was there and told him his idea. And the radio wasn't well known at the time. It was only, since January, and this was August. And they said, sure, we'll give it a chance. They didn't believe it would be a big success. So on the following Sunday, the first sports broadcast went out by it was 2RN at the time. And the man chosen to do it was a man called Peter Meegan. He was the commentator. A journalist with the Irish Times. He had worked in London for a good few years. He was a good sportsman. He had played football over there and so on. And he was asked to do it. And in his own words, written years later, he had no box, no seat or anything. He was among the spectators on the sideline. They all had, planks really on concrete blocks. He was among those. And when they got up, he had to get up and push his head around them. But he spoke about what was happening as best he could. And he even said the start was, before the game started, an engineer hung a harness around my neck. He called it a harness. And once the referee threw in the ball, he said, fire away. And he fired away. Now, the strange thing is, that alone was the first broadcast in Ireland to the first sports event anywhere in the world to go out on live radio. So that was a unique distinction for 2RN. Not a full year in existence, and they had invented sports broadcasting.
It's not bad.
And see, the industry it has grown to. And whenever I'm abroad and there's a discussion on radio or anything, I remind them all where sport was brought into because there were radios in other countries for years ahead of 1926.
And was it straightforward to get the signal from Croke Park to the GPO?
I'm not sure, but they did it.
Yeah.
They did it, and then, it was so popular that 2 weeks later, when Cork and Tipperary were replaying the Munster final, he was there as well. And the final was broadcast, and football likewise, So that is the start that sports broadcasting had. And as time went on, they added minors to it and juniors. Things got bigger and better, you could say, since then.
When did you get into it?
I got in 1949. I came to Dublin in, I would say, September 48, attending the Teachers' Training College in Drumcondra. The All-Ireland final was on the following Sunday, and that was our number one, and you didn't need a ticket that time. You came along and you paid at the Styles. It wasn't much. In today's terms, was free entrance almost.
Yeah.
And I was there for that All-Ireland final. Mayo were in it. I've seen a lot of Mayo. They won in 50-51. They were beaten 1 point by the great Cavan team that won in the Polo Grounds the year before. And it was a great occasion, It was the windiest day I was ever in Croke Park for. The wind was with Cavan in the first half. They scored 3 goals in 3 points, and Mayo had no score at half time. But they had the wind in the second half. And then narrowed it down and down and down. And with the time nearly up, they were only 1 point behind. And they did get a free, and it wasn't scored. Now, it was maybe on the 14, but it was an angle to the right. And I'd say, scientifically he was right. Mick Higgins was standing on the goal line for Cavan. But he advanced. The rule was 14 yards from the ball. But the 14 yards, as mentioned, straight in.
Yeah.
Whereas he was at an angle, he maintained he was about 17 yards from the ball. So he moved out and he was in a position to field the ball that would have gone over the bar.
Right.
Down the field, the game was over.
So the Mayo people, the curse before the curse.
Point, and they had the same experience many times since, but they did win too. They were a team, they were great characters. I got to know them all. That was one of the privileges of being a sports commentator. You got to know the players, It was easy meeting that, and there were no managers say, don't talk to anybody. It was free and open, and I think it was great.
And what did Mayo blame an All-Ireland final defeat on before the curse?
Well, the curse, they say, came in 51.
But prior to 51, obviously this is 48 today. What was their main excuse? They didn't have the curse to blame?
They had the one, they had won in 36, and that was the previous one. There was no talk of it. And there was no talk of it for a long number of years until somebody came up with the possibility.
Yeah, a reason, a myth.
Yeah. And it is still there, anyhow.
You mentioned getting to know the players there, and it's very interesting. Like I've read your book, From Doonsheen to Croke Park. It's a couple of years now since I've read it, but the one thing that I'll always remember is just talking about your relationship with the Kerry players and the Kerry players who were living in Dublin at the time and actually training them.
Yeah, well, I was in Dublin, and there were Kerry players in Dublin always that time. A few of them working as civil servants, maybe teachers, and quite a few of them would be attending college. So it wasn't so easy to travel. So we used to gather together, different places, and what we used to say, we'll be kicking around. There were no major tactics, but it changed as the year went on. And when Mick O'Dwyer took over, now I had been doing it before that, Mick O'Dwyer and the county chairman got on to me, would I organise them and have a proper training camp, if you like. Now, we hadn't enough numbers to do it on our own. We had maybe 6 or 7 Kerry players. But we needed more, and we were open house to people from any county.
Right.
We had people from Leitrim that used to come, from Sligo, from Mayo, from different places. And we'd a lot from Mayo, and we used to have great fun. We'd even train together, and they might be playing against each other in the match the following Sunday. That didn't matter. I used to say to them, look, we're all training together. When you go out in the match, you have a job to do, you have a job to do, I have a job to do, and let's all enjoy the whole thing.
It is remarkable to think now that somebody who's commentating on them would be asked by the county to be involved. Like it's a privileged
But I knew all those lads, and you know the selection I had when Míchael O'Muircheartaigh came. I mean, I had nearly the best of them. Jack O'Shea, who would rate as one of the best midfielders of all time. He had won a minor in 75. He had won 321s in a row. And he burst on the scene in 76. The end of 76, he was a senior. Mick Spillane was there, a brother of Pat, and he strangely has more All-Ireland medals than Pat. He has 12 and Pat is only 11.
How did you...
Charlie Nelligan and Paddy Mahoney and Ger Power and John O'Keefe.
It's a good team.
They were all...
The Dublin seven-a-side team was a pretty good team.
Well, they were a good team. They were all footballers. They were all keen, and none of them would say, well, now you have no All-Ireland medal, you can't be telling us what to do.
Yeah.
They would never be that way. Whatever I'd say was the law. And
if any of them were ever getting dropped or having a bad game, would you find yourself kind of on the radio going, no, he's playing well, keep him in there?
Well, no, I told them now we often travel together to matches, you know, a few of us. And I would say, I have a job to do. My job is there are 2 sets of listeners, or maybe more. The neutrals, the followers of each county. I have to... They're the interesting people once the game started. I am speaking, I'm trying to give as much information about what is happening. That's the advice I used to give young commentators. Your duty is to explain what is happening, not what you'd like to see happen.
Yeah, but it's hard when you're a human being.
I never found it hard.
Right, okay. If Jacko kicks a bad wide, you're like, well...
It should be the same as a wide by any other person. And you know, at that time, players used to be told, in the parade, be concentrating, don't ever look up at the stand to see you being admired and all this. But a few of them never passed the box without... And we had great fun, really.
Yeah.
And I would say the greatest fun of all, in 83, Kerry were going for 9 in a row in Munster. And Jack O'Shea was captain that year. So it was a special year. And early in the year I said, Jack, now you'll have 2 speeches to make this year, one in July, Munster final, one in September, All-Ireland final. You'll have to learn a bit of Irish. And I started teaching him little bits as we went on from February on, you know. Couldn't you on and we built it up and we travelled together and pulled aside somewhere on the way down, and I made a mock presentation. He gave the finest speech I ever. You know, we laughed at it really, but it was fun.
Yeah.
Went in then, and Cork won with a last minute guy. I can remember every move of it. It was a little beyond the 45. Dinny Allen was the kicker. They were a point down, and you know they were trying to get a draw at least. And Dinny Allen was a very careful fella. He was making sure he looked well and fixing himself. And then another player got uneasy. Time is running out. Tadhg Healy. And he passed him by and took the free in towards the goal. Tadhg Murphy caught it, turned around the back of the net. Final whistle. Cork were Munster champions. And the finest speech ever taught or learned was never delivered. But the strange thing is, Kerry forgot to bring the cup with them.
Right. They were so confident they were going to win.
Well, they honestly forget. I have to give them credit.
Yeah.
But then Frank Murphy of Cork, they say, his people used to criticise him, but he was ready for all emergencies. He had a spare cup downstairs in case of emergency. Wow. That's the cup that was presented to Christy Ryan. And a great Cork follower came with us. He used to always go to matches just in case Cork would win the day I wouldn't be there. He came with us, and of course he was on top of the heaven. Coming back, we got a Cork jersey, put it on him and sat him in the bonnet of the car going through Fermoy. You wouldn't get away with that now.
No.
But we looked upon it, look, the game is over, the result won't change. Míchael O'Muircheartaigh's theory always was, let the winners enjoy their win. It doesn't change. Next year won't be long coming around, and then he used to whisper, we're a bit ahead and more for next year. You know, it was that casual.
Yeah.
But I thought it was great fun. sometimes I think nowadays the enjoyment is taken out of it. You must be suffering, sort of, but there were good times, you know.
But you must meet a lot of the young players still around the country. You're at games.
Met a good few of them today, you know.
Well,
they're ordinary, nice, decent fellas.
And they seem like they're enjoying it. So maybe the story of the sacrifice...
But they're not enjoying it when they're together, because they're, you know, being driven and you must do this, and they couldn't take a sip out of this without permission, you know. Their diet is controlled. Maybe it's a good thing, you know. But too much discipline and control. I don't believe a good player should be told going out in the field how he should play. The good player gauges the situation quickly and generally does the right thing.
Yeah.
But things are changing and it will be that way forever. But
clearly, as somebody who trained the greatest or half the greatest Gaelic football team of all time, you have thoughts on the game and you would watch a game unfold and you would see teams make mistakes. Would you diagnose that in commentary? Would you say that...
Well, I'd say, you know, where the move went wrong, you know, as much as you could, and sometimes you wouldn't be absolutely sure, but you'd put it forward as a possibility. That for many years now, they didn't have anyone with you.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, you know, the analysts... I think the time for analysing a game is when it's over, not after 5 minutes. You know, that there's sometimes too much interruption with the play. What the followers wanted, the listeners of the audience, let it be television or radios, they want to know what is actually happening, not missing some of it. But commentaries are increasing, you know, in popularity and more channels now. There was only the RT that time, and you have any amount of them now. Who would have dreamt of that 50 years ago?
Yeah. Or the phones being the next...
Exactly, yeah.
You've alluded to how GAA has changed for the player, but are you satisfied with how GAA has changed from a commentating point of view and from an analysis point of view?
Well, from a broadcasting point of view, I used to always like to go to the dressing rooms, and I did, and it lasted while I was doing it. You know, free admittance, and you were welcome in dressing rooms.
Pre-match?
Pre-match.
Yeah.
Because a person I actually saw a person getting injured in the dressing room one day before a very important match, one of the famous 4 matches, Dublin and Meath in 1991. While I was talking to this fella, he was changing into his playing clothes and he got some sort of a spasm in his back and collapsed on the ground. And of course, Sean Boylan is a herbalist, and and Jerry McEntee, a team member, was a doctor. They put him on the table. And when I went out, I was able to say that maybe such a person will take no part in the game.
Yeah.
And
now it's the type of information that they guard jealously.
You're not allowed, journalists nowadays are not allowed into the dressing room. And I think that's a pity in a way. I mean, there's no point in having locked in thought while they're in the dressing room. The players were no, but even in those early days, it was common to see people smoking in the dressing room. Wouldn't hear of it nowadays. Things have changed a lot, and a lot is for the better, really. You know.
That was still in the 90s when I started going. You could still get in post-match. And
you could, yeah.
There was a Wexford hurler who was like, lads, one of you mentioned that I had a cigarette the last day. Don't do it again. I'm getting grief from my kids for it. So I think there was a joy of, like, that's fine.
But the player that collapsed was Terry Ferguson, a good player. They missed him that day, you know. And but you'd learn a bit in the dressing room.
Yeah.
I always went down to see the bus arriving with the players, just to look at them coming out the bus, and you could read a lot into them.
Like the horse in the parade ring.
Exactly. You could read a lot into them. You'd know, you'd have an idea team that has winners written all over their demeanour, their behaviour. They're cued into it, but then the wonderful thing about it, you can be totally wrong.
The glorious uncertainty of sport.
I have seen, I suppose, the strangest, the game I remember most of all would be the Leinster hurling final of 1980. Now, Kilkenny, reigning All-Ireland champions, as they have been many a time since then, they were the champions. They were playing Offaly. And Offaly was simply nobodies. If you went back to 1969, they reached the Leinster final, but got nowhere. You had to go back to 1929 to find them in another Leinster final. That's how far off the mark. They had never won a Leinster. And here they were in the final. The attendance tells a story, 9,300 and something, at an event that usually drew over 30,000. Yeah. Olympic Games were on in Moscow the same day. But they beat Kilkenny that day. Now, it was the greatest sensation of all time, I'd say, in hurling. Offaly, who had nothing, never reached a minor final before that. And here they were, Leinster champions. Not alone that, they went on to play in 11 consecutive Leinster finals and won 7 of them. And in the 20 years that was left in the century of the millennium, they won 4 All-Irelands, and no county could top that. I always call that a miracle. But I did witness it happen. I had a small little hint, but I didn't pay any heed to it. The evening of the semi-finals, they beat Laois in a semi-final. I went into the hospital there in Adelaide Road, eye and ear, to see somebody that was in there with an eye injury. And an Offaly player got an eye injury that day. I didn't know he was gone to hospital. When I went in there, didn't I meet 3 of the Offaly players? And we were talking usually about the match. And after a while, one of them said to me, "You're talking a lot about Kilkenny and Wexford. Did you see us at all?" I said, "I didn't see much of you because while you were playing, I was over in the dressing rooms finding out all about the match I was broadcasting." And Paddy Delaney did say, "Don't roll us out now for the final." Now you'd feel like laughing, but you couldn't. And Paddy was a great friend of mine after, like all of them. But they did win, playing very good hurling. And the strange thing, the captain was Pádraig Horton. Now, it was afterwards I heard the real story. After the game, he was the captain. He had to be interviewed. That would be the right thing. And I'd arranged for somebody that would waylay him and bring him up. And here I was interviewing him, maybe 15 minutes after the game ending. And the goalkeeper, Damien Martin, appeared at the door, and he was making all sorts of signals to me, and he was pointing at Pádraig and pointing at me, and I hadn't a clue what he meant. I thought he wanted to be included. But it wasn't. That word had come to Croke Park that Pádraig Horton's father died.
Oh, God.
They wouldn't let him come to the match. He had a bad heart.
Oh, no.
And I think he should have been there because he had played for Offaly at his time. His son was captain. And I went down naturally to the funeral and all that, but I learned he was listening to the game in the kitchen, and the grandchildren never there. It was getting very exciting towards the finish. Offaly were leading a little bit, and there was pandemonium with the children, and he wasn't hearing it properly. And he said, "I listened in the car." And he went out, sat into the car to have the rest of it in peace. Once it was over, they all dashed out and he was dead in the car.
Right.
So I said, "Now look, he was the first into heaven saying that Offaly had won a Leinster championship." So that was a distinction, and that was a good thing out of it. And there was a great funeral. All the hurlers came to it, and the Kilkenny fellas came and so on.
Yeah.
But they were great games. The same. I knocked a special kick out of when something happened that hadn't happened before.
Yeah.
Or that happened in a long time. I know it's great when a county wins 4 in a row and all that.
We all love the underdog story, don't we?
But it's another world when something. Like when Down won for the first time in 1960. They beat Kerry, who were reigning All-Ireland champions. And to see the way they swarmed the pitch. And then people used to speak a lot about the border at that time. You don't hear the border at all nowadays.
Well, maybe again
the border. And the chant was, it's the first time that the Sam Maguire Cup will be carried across the border. That was a victory in its own, to carry that across the border into County Down.
And you can see then that they got the support of the...
There's always a place for the unexpected.
Absolutely.
And a big place.
Mícheal, it's been a privilege spending time with you this morning. Thanks so much for talking to us /afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks
I enjoyed it.
It's Mícheal O'Muircheartaigh. And he didn't on camera complain about the tea that Tommy made for him, which was gross.
Yeah, he did it in a very kind of nice way. He was Tommy.
Didn't drink it.
Tommy comes in with a cup of tea and is like, "I hope that's okay for you, Mícheal." And Mícheal takes a sip and he's like, "It's grand." He kind of knew that it wasn't right, and he's like, "I'd usually make my tea with hotter water than that."
Boiling. The key to a good cup of tea is boiling water. Let the water boil.
And Tommy was just standing there, ashen. He just froze. He was like,
it was like half tea, half milk.
Yeah.
Mícheal was like, okay.
He was
okay.
He just got wrecked by Mícheal O'Muircheartaigh.
Yeah.
So at least it's a story to tell the grandkids.
One of the things that I don't think gets enough play is how many of that Kerry team were in Dublin and how B. Hall would train them. And then he would go and commentate on them, and they were the greatest team of all time.
Yeah,
after Tyrone and the Naughties, obviously. But so that's some of them there. Jacko, John O'Keefe, Nelligan, Ger Power.
Yeah.
Was Mikey Sheehy training in Dublin as well? Was that like a regular thing? Do you know?
I'm not sure. He certainly did for a time. I'm not sure how long he actually spent up here, but it is mad really that it was kind of an ancillary sort of training to what was actually happening down in Killarney or Tralee.
And they'd bring lads who were playing against them the weekend in for training, like knock the shite out of them and knock the shite out of them again at the weekend.
Yeah, it's incredible that this is that are only stopped in the 90s really, or maybe it's not. The 90s is a long time ago, but or maybe it's. Maybe there should be more of that in today's world. Like maybe they should.
The 90s is a blink of an eye.
Maybe you should be hired by the Kildare footballers to train them.
Well,
basically Kildare, or Nathan Murphy could be hired to. Kevin Kilban could be hired by Stephen Rochford to train the Dublin-based ones and to stop all this logistical.
That would definitely be better than Nathan. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I quickly changed my tack there.
Yeah. Well done. Yeah.
I think Kevin Kilban would be a great.
I wish there was footage of that though, like of those training sessions and like of what that was like. You know, there should be a documentary about that, just that.
Yeah, you would almost get one out of it. You've only got two. You've got very little footage of Nico's training, and it's very late on. And the one piece of footage that they always play is Paddy running along by Ventry, and it's that exact same footage of him running along the road.
From the documentary.
From the documentary, but it's played in every other one. They always go back to it, so they don't actually have that much footage from around that time, which is a bit of a shame, because I think there was just a general. There was no sentimentality about it. It was like, just get on with it, put the head down, keep going, power along.
Obviously, one of the most striking things about the chat that Mícheal had there was when he said, "You nearly have to be suffering to be playing inter-county in 2018." One group who definitely aren't suffering at the moment are the Carlow footballers. Turlock O'Brien was on last night speaking with Adrian. Here's a bit from that conversation.
Yeah, look, I think the Western Championship is very good, apart from the fact that Dublin are so far ahead of everybody else. And that has created a problem in its own right, because a lot of counties are, they're beaten before they go out. You know, they're thinking ahead and saying, what's the point, not going to beat Dublin, you know, and I think that's a very defeatist attitude. And it has, I think it has affected, it held back counties in the last 10 years or so, and I think the counties that make the move now are probably the lower ranked counties, and the big counties like Kildare and Meath, I suppose they've had the rise up maybe this weekend. They both won out of the championship, and you would say that they have greater playing resources, and certainly, you know, I mean, our neighbours Kildare we would consider our club staff to be very, very strong. They would have a lot more high quality teams to pick from, and they have class footballers as well, you know, but maybe something wasn't there last Sunday, but certainly you would expect though that Meath and Kildare would be Dublin's greatest rivals because of their population, strength and depth and so on, but I think the Carlows and Longfords and Leashes now are beginning to I suppose shake the standings in Leinster, and it's interesting to see that Carlow, Laois and Longford are 3 of the semi-finals this year.
Yeah, there you go. Always interesting to hear from Turlock. Like one of those genuine characters in the GAA that you kind of are delighted are getting the airplay that they're getting at the moment. Even his backstory is pretty good.
Yeah, like I'm getting bored of Carlow at this point.
And
maybe
now.
they're too good. I'm not being serious. It's a beautiful story. It's a great story. It's the only thing is you can't beat a fairy tale story 2 years in a row unless they get to the Super 8s, which I think they actually might do. I've got a gut feeling that we're going to see Carlow becoming one of the top 8 counties this year.
Do you get Brendan Murphy back for the Super 8s then? If that's the case, and he's welcomed home like the prodigal son.
I get a sense that if Brendan Murphy walked back into the Carlow dressing room, there would be no prodigal son about it. There would have to be a serious discussion between the players and the management, separate to Brendan Murphy, and they would have to look at themselves and say, are we going to take him back? Not that there's any hatred there or anything. It is like we've begun this journey without him. That started with a win against a Division 2 team and has now gone on to win against a Division 1 team. We are now 1 game away from a Leinster final. Do we now welcome back a guy who wasn't part of this, who wasn't part of the hard graft that came between...
Stick him on the bench for the first 25 minutes and get him in there. That's how that works. That's how we all know how it works in every 2-bit Division 4 junior club team in the country. It's like the out lad comes back at 40 who like was the county lad from 20 years ago. It's like you'll have to be on the bench now at the start, 20 minutes on. As soon as there's an injury or as soon as someone misses a free or a pass, you're straight in there. That's how it works.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure he'd get welcomed back with open arms this year. Of course, next year, if it's a new year, new page. That being said, the stakes are much higher this year than they've ever been for Carlow in any of our living memories.
And that they might make the Super 8s.
This is potentially Carlow's biggest year since the 1940s, when they last won the Leinster Championship, I think. Their only Leinster Championship. And they got to another final around that time. Like, you're talking about 70 years of history here if they manage to make a Leinster final, because how close they would then be when they inevitably lose Dublin to making the last 8, which of course in this context is a humongous achievement given the prestige of the Super 8. So yeah, I can see why they would do that. It is a huge decision if he comes home, but this is all hypothetical. He's not going to come home.
It's just an interesting little wrinkle in everything that's going on at the moment now. So don't forget the Off the Ball Roadshow, the Euro 88 Roadshow takes place in Vicar Street next Thursday, the 7th of June, with John Giles, Ronnie Whelan, Kevin Moran and Ray Houghton. Ticket details are over at offtheball.com/events. You can go and check it out there. Tell me.
Memories of Euro 88?
Well, obviously you weren't born. When were you born?
We've been through this before. I was born a few years later than that.
94?
Yes.
95? 94. So you're 24. When are you 25?
No, I'm
23. When are you 24?
July.
So you're born in 94. What do you know of Euro 88?
What do I know of Euro 88? It's who put the ball in England's net.
Who's in our group?
Well, we've got England in our group. Is it Bulgaria?
Nope.
No, I don't know why I said Bulgaria. That's Netherlands.
Netherlands, yeah.
And who was the final team in our group?
Who does Ronnie Whelan score against?
You're going to have to Belgium.
USSR.
USSR, of course.
Which was still a thing. Was the USSR a thing when you were alive? No.
No. What, is this just some sort of public shaming of youth here?
No, it's not. It's
I don't know why I can't remember USSR.
Because I'm interested in how you've consumed the narratives around Euro 88. Like,
it's all Ray Houghton, really. It is all Ray Houghton when you look at it from the sepia-toned perspective of 2004.
So what do you know about that England team? So England in 1990, what do you know about that team?
Well, you know about Gaza and his tears.
Right, so he invents football. That's the moment where where Rupert Murdoch goes, I'm going to get some of that. But that England team in 1990, you know how far they go?
To the quarterfinals.
To the semi-finals.
Semi-finals.
And they get beaten on penalties? On penalties. In Euro 88, they lost every game, which is just 2 years previous with the same squad and the same manager. But you know who their star striker is in Euro 88?
Would it be a guy called Gary Lineker?
Yeah, so you do know all that kind of stuff. So while Ray Houghton's performance is very important, Paddy Bonner has the greatest goalkeeping display in the history of world football. I brook no argument about this. He has about 15 saves from point blank range.
Tell me this, when it comes to Paddy Bonner at that time, is there kind of a sense of bewilderment in Ireland about it? It's like, oh my God, this is Paddy Bonner doing this.
Well, no, because before the back pass rule, he was a perfectly good goalkeeper. Then the back pass rule came in, it was like, ooh, this isn't going to work out so well for Paddy. But he was a sensationally good shot stopper. as is you bear witness to in that game, and then also he saves it quite a bit from Hagi. Like in Italia '90, Georgi Hagi from Romania was a sensational footballer, like one of those capable of getting the ball, driving at the opposition defence and then pinging it in from 40 yards or 20 yards or however close you let him get. And he was having shot after shot after shot after shot. In fact, he saved them all. And then eventually saves the Timofte one as well. But like, so what else do you know about Euro 88?
Well, it is the kind of breaking of the mould. It is the first time that Ireland have ended their drought in terms of qualifying for a tournament. It is a watershed moment, of course it is. It is the first time when Ireland look at themselves in the footballing world and say, all right, we're okay, we can handle ourselves, we're good enough to qualify for this. There's been near misses in the past, we're finally here, we're finally in the promised land. And it is the start of an unbelievable string, the string of sporting memories that will never be surpassed in Irish history unless another great Ireland team does come along. It's the sort of thing that is reminiscent of 2002. Like, that should have become 2004, 2006, or should have become 2006, 2008, when we have this great team of players, when we have the Roy Keanes, and when Roy Keane comes back, and you've got the Damien Duffs, Richard Dunns, that era. That's what they could have been. I mean, they're the two greatest teams that we've ever seen in Irish football, and one got to 3 tournaments, the other one got to 1. And I don't know why I've already gone down the hole of turning this into a negative about Irish football, but it's true, no?
Yeah, we completely underachieved with our second greatest set of players.
It gave us this belief, and when you look at 2002 from that perspective, you're like, right, okay, it's only 8 years since we last qualified for a World Cup, and then 2004 comes and goes. Switzerland, isn't it, that eventually put the nail in our coffin for 2004. 2006, I think they were in our group as well in terms of the qualification for the World Cup then in 06. It was like, it's all right, it's only 4 years. And then suddenly the years start slipping away, and it's another 6 years, and it's another 8 years.
And we're no longer relevant.
Exactly, and it just happens very quickly. Whereas I'd imagine at the time, 88, 1994, it's just like an express train. It's like the years are flying by, and it's like, this is amazing.
92 was like
that was a bitter disappointment.
Yeah, and that team was starting to play really good football as well, because 94 they're already just past it, and only for the infusion of Roy Keane into that squad, then it's like, there's a bit of fresh life in this. And in fairness, McAteer and Gary Kelly played brilliantly in the build-up to that as well. Phil Babb was playing alongside Paul McGrath, and therefore looked much better than he actually was. But anyway, let's move on, because you were in Griffith College last night, where this massive issue about green space in inner city Dublin, and like, just for the sake of balance here, we will talk about the lack of green space in the inner cities generally around the country, but this is kind of emblematic of the issues that we have at the moment, and it comes off the back of government inaction when it comes to how the sports grants are actually awarded, and also the fact that we still don't have the sports policy that Minister Brendan Griffin promised on Off the Ball that he would have in a matter of weeks a couple of months back. So what's the story here on?
So yesterday there was a public meeting in Griffith College, as you say, regarding the defending of green space in Dolphin Park. Now, Dolphin Park is the closest football pitch that you have to Dublin 8, to the Liberties, which is where Kevin's clubhouse is. It's where they're based. They don't have their own green space in that area because there is no green space. A 50,000 population and not one single playing pitch of appropriate size for kids or for adult teams to play on. So they travel down to Dolphin Park to train there, to play there. It's where Templeogue Sing Street is based. So they share the facility there. Templeogue own the facility, and they allow Kevin's to come in and use it. Between the two teams, you've got a huge amount of teams using this. You've got 18 teams from Kevin's using the facility, and Templeogue have 26 teams using the facility. So what's happening here is that the sale of lands has been pretty much pushed through to the point where we're at the very closing stages here, and this thing requires stopping rather than this thing being a conversation. So Dolphin Park, 8,278 square metres are currently up for sale, which is, put into perspective, around 2/3 the size of Croke Park. On top of that, a training field there is also going to be sold, so that's 150% the size of Croke Park. It's time and a half of Croke Park. So we've got 2 full-length big pitches, and they can also go cross-field on the pitches as well for training sessions. Very good for training, and you can also play up to 13-a-side minor level on those cross-field pitches. So you're going to lose half of one of those pitches, you're going to lose a training pitch, and that means you only got 1 full-length pitch left in the facility, and it's already packed to capacity in terms of training slots and stuff like that, so it's naturally going to cause huge problems. I'm going to stop explaining it at this point. I'm going to let JJ O'Mahony take over. He's the head of facilities when it comes to Kevin's GAA. You will have seen him on Off the Ball a couple of months ago when we did a report around the sports capital funding, but this one here, he's specifically talking about the Templeogue Sing Street and Dolphin Park situation.
Well, with Dolphin Park, we've been tenants up there for over 40 years. In fact, just longer than that, we've been in the area since 1902. In short, without getting into the history, part of the land is being put up for sale. It's been deemed by the GAA that it's a small piece of land, maybe a sliver of land they deem it. We looked into it in more detail, and basically, when we got into it, the playing fields that we're going to lose is 2/3 the size of Crow Park, the pitch in Crow Park. Then, when we got into it further, the full development would mean we're actually losing 115% because there has to be replacement dressing rooms built. Kevins are absolutely appalled by this, because this is an area where it's 86% below the standards for international green space. 86% below. No other community could tolerate that. Then, on top of that, the sale of this land is coming out of community for which they're absolutely devoid of green space, where we have a lot of social issues, things like drugs, things like crime, and even the guard said tonight, I don't know if you heard, our local guard says, look, he has no doubt that Kevins is saving lives. I have no doubt that since I've joined, the number of lives that have been saved up there. But you know what? We are looking to reach out. The GAA ratified the sale of these lands. How could they? If they have any moral compass whatsoever, they could not ratify the sale of these lands.
They can clearly see the issues here. So why are they selling these lands? Who is to profit from this?
Frankly, there's a number of people that can profit out of this. So the first ones are the GAA. There's a debt into the GAA. We've heard different figures, and I won't mention a figure, but it's a very manageable figure. This debt can be negotiated by the GAA. There will be the other people to profit out of this at the expense of the most probably socially deprived area, one of the most socially deprived areas in Ireland, is a property developer. He's going to make money out of this. And then we're going to have the Christian Brothers, who are also taking a cut of money out of this.
Could you explain that, please, the Christian Brothers link to this situation?
Well, the lands were originally owned by the Christian Brothers, and they sold them to the local GAA club, Gaelic Football Club. As a clause in that lease, we believe, and we understand, we have solid grounds to believe, that 50% of the proceeds have to go towards the Christian Brothers. Now, how can the GAA stand by and watch a property developer, the GAA, take money from the most deprived community that needs every block of land? It's put out there to improve facilities. If you heard the statistics of Gerard Mills from UCD earlier, it is horrendous. Of the 93 sports clubs in Dublin, Kevin is by far the lowest served in green space. We have 50,000 people, yet they're coming in selling green space. It makes no sense. Now, to me, the only sense it is that this is a two-tier GAA community now. When I joined the GAA, it was a compassionate community. I joined the GAA, it was all about sport, and it was all about playing. Not about how big your clubhouse was, not about how big your gyms was. It's about how you get children involved in sport. That's what it was all about. To me, it's now, if you have connections into the right area, into the right place, of the upper echelons of the GAA, then you'll get the right result. But not us. We don't have those connections. There's only one solution for this. The GAA needs to step forward, take their moral and social responsibility correctly, and go to meet government, to meet Dublin City Council, and fund what needs to be funded. And we Kevins are not asking for anything for nothing. We will dip into our pockets, we will fundraise, we will do whatever it takes. We will do like every club around the country, small club in particular. Bagpacking, book sales, standing at the side of the roads for marathons to support them. We'll do all these things. We're the foot soldiers of the GAA. Don't turn your back on us.
And that's very clear. When you see the amount of people that were in this lecture hall at Griffith College this evening, there's unbelievable passion here. There's just an unbelievable body of people here that will help you to achieve that. And what I wonder is that, like you put on screen tonight, the actual plans for this development. This thing has been coming for a while now. So why hasn't Pádraig Duffy done it in his previous regime as Director General of the GAA? Like Tom Ryan's name is mentioned because he's currently in that position, but presumably this started to happen under Pádraig Duffy's watch, and there's been two different Director Generals now who could have done something on behalf of the GAA and have yet to step in.
Okay, so as I just mentioned, if you have contacts in there, I'm sure you're going to get a better hearing. We went to them, we made a hearing, and you know what? We walked out of that hearing and we were convinced that this will not proceed, because when you look...
When was this hearing, sorry?
This was probably early 2017. We went in, we met the Dublin County Board, and we walked out. And on paper, it could not be possible that any compassionate or caring GAA club organisation would ratify the sales of these grounds. We were devastated when they turned around, because the feeling in the meeting was very different from the ultimate letter that we got. Now, you've got to look at this. This was a finance issue. This was a finance issue at the time.
In whose interest would it be to not interfere?
Well, I suppose the GAA got a debt in there. They say it's a significant debt. It's definitely not an unmanageable debt. It would be anybody that would be interested in managing that debt, or, I don't know, it's claimed that the reason was to improve facilities. We've shown exactly here tonight. You can improve. We fully agree with the owners of the land that the facilities need to be improved. 100%. We will dig into our pockets and improve. All you need to do, put the new dressing room on the existing dressing room, and you don't lose 115% the size of Crow Park. That's simple. This then boils down to one thing: money. Money from an area that has been deprived of capital grants, as you have been shown earlier. We have been absolutely excluded for 15 years for capital grants, and it's time that the GAA, the government and Dublin City Council stepped up and put right what's wrong.
What happens now?
Well, we've now asked our local politicians, TDs, to get us in front, to show the hard facts that were presented tonight, to get us in front of members of the government, Dublin City Council and the GAA. Let them face up to what we have to face up to every day. Let us present it in one. Everybody has reasons why they couldn't attend tonight. Lots of reasons. But watch this space, because we're not going to give up on this. We are going to fight this until we win.
Yeah, that's very clear when you look at the volume of people there last night, the passion which they spoke with. This is something that they're not going to give up on, and rightly so. It is an almighty battle they face. It is Kevin's GAA against the GAA, the church, property developers. They're three big pillars of Irish society to try and go up against. So they've got one hell of a fight on their hands, but they've got an incredibly dedicated bunch of people who are very not just interested in the cause, but taken by the cause. I mean, JJ O'Mahony, who was speaking there, didn't even grow up in the Liberties. He's from Cork. You can probably hear by his accent, like he's from Cork. He's not from this area of Dublin. He's obviously migrated to the area and has been taken by the situation to the point where he's got himself steeped in that, and he's got a very admirable cause. Like he mentioned Professor Gerald Mills there, who gave a talk last night, and some of his statistics, just to kind of outline some of them, just again to kind of reiterate the kind of concrete jungle that is this area around the Liberties. So for a 1 kilometre radius around Kevin's clubhouse, which is in Dublin 8, 64% of the, 14% of the ground around there is green. So there is very little green space. It's all tiny patches of land. When you match that up in terms of population of different areas of Dublin, Clontarf is the only area with a similar population that matches up in terms of density that have a GAA club in it. But Clontarf has 11.4 square kilometres of grass per person. Kevin's has a 4 square kilometre per person of grass. It is by far the worst in Dublin. It comes last in those statistics when it comes to green patches, that they don't have it. That this isn't just a club who want to get land or want to acquire more land or are trying to chance their arm here. They're trying to cling on to every blade of grass they currently have, because they know once that's built upon, it is never happening. Once something is paved in this country, you are never destructing it. And in fairness, it is the elephant in the room when you have these conversations about the housing crisis and about homelessness in this country. Like John Lonergan as well, who I've mentioned earlier on, the former governor of Mountjoy, who was there last night, just points out the very, very startling fact that once you overpopulate an already overpopulated area like this, without green space, without recreational facilities, the chance of crime, which is already very high in this area, is only going to increase. It is only going to get worse. The amount of people that he met in Mountjoy from that part of Dublin when he was governor in the 1980s is far and above what that should be in terms of the way population is split up in this country. So that is the implications here. That is the elephant in the room addressed. And as I say, they're not looking to try and kind of acquire a huge piece of property, destruct it and build grass over it. They're looking to hold on to the one thing that they have.
And what are Croke Park saying about all this?
Well, we don't know yet. We haven't heard from Tom Ryan. He was invited, I understand, to that public meeting last night, but had engagements elsewhere. It does feel like we do need to give it a little bit of time. We do need to wait for a response from Tom Ryan, who's just in the door here. Like whatever his personal view is on this, given his financial background, will be very interesting. I'm not giving him a free pass here, and I don't think anybody in Kevin's is giving him a free pass, but I do feel that they're not all guns blazing at the moment for Tom Ryan because he is just in the door, but they should be incredibly high on his agenda. It should be incredibly high on Shane Ross's agenda. It should be incredibly high on Leo Varadkar's agenda, because if they went down to that meeting last night and saw what I saw, they would be like, this thing needs to stop immediately, this development can't happen. And even more than that, the proposed development in Threeses Gardens, which is right in the heart of Dublin 8, needs to be accelerated quickly. They need more green space. Going the other direction is going to kill a lot of young kids and a lot of their hopes, I should say, in terms of playing Gaelic football, in terms of just having a recreational opportunity. And that was a really noticeable thing, actually. Just one last thing before we throw to our next clip. Last night, they played a video on screen, and it's Kevin's Hurling and Camogie. And what was really noticeable was the vibrancy of the Camogie club, as in, this was a Camogie club that had probably a similar amount of girls playing for it than the boys playing for the Hurling club. We're talking under 10s here. We're talking about the nationwide problem of girls not being interested in team sports or not being given the same opportunity as the boys. In Kevin's GAA, with the volunteers they have there, with the marvellous work they're doing, they have, with whatever resources they have, they are giving the opportunities to girls and boys on a completely equal footing. If they had the facilities, this would be one of the stand-up clubs in the country that everybody could look at and say, look at what they're doing, look at the opportunity they're giving to young girls to actually progress and be active and not get tired with the things that girls have got tired with in the past, which is not having the same opportunities as boys. But they need the facilities to do it, and it looks like it's going to go the other way. But you mentioned what's the GAA response. They do have a big hitter from the GAA fraternity, so to speak, behind him, and that is Nicky Brennan. And when Nicky Brennan was GAA president, he kind of took this project under his wing. He was very interested by this. He's obviously not from this area of Dublin, and he had a big meeting in his own club last night, but he elected to go to the Griffith College, in fairness to him, and speak about this and lend his support. I spoke to him after the meeting last night, and I began by asking him just how he got involved with Kevin's GAA.
Well, when I finished as GAA president, I was asked would I get involved, expecting it to probably be 12 months or something, in a kind of a mentoring role with Kevin's. I'm now in my 10th year, so I kind of come to Kevin's periodically. They call me up to chat about things, help them with meetings with Dublin City Council, and of course help them now in relation to guidance in relation to what's happening or what is proposed to happen in Dolphin Park. So that's my involvement. Now, my involvement initially started around 2000, when I was responsible for actually putting in Paul McManus as the Games Development Officer into Kevin's, and he's actually still here to this day.
So what would the ideal GAA response to this current situation be, in your view?
Well, I think first of all there's two clubs involved, and I think that both clubs are using the facility at the moment. I think the notion that anybody would sell some of the green space in Dolphin Park is absolute heresy. That cannot allow to happen, and we've seen enough in the presentation tonight to know how scarce green land is in Dublin 8. So the notion that some would be sold for housing is absolutely wrong and would seriously impact Kevin's in particular, because the club has grown in terms of the numbers of boys and girls playing hurling and camogie. It is a phenomenal club in an area of Dublin that has been very socially deprived for a long period of time, and you've seen tonight with the attendance here, there's a passion and there's a great vibe about the club.
It is a story of two clubs because they're so closely linked. They share this facility, which is at question here. At the same time, Tom Ryan and the upper echelons of the GAA getting involved can have a significant say in this. So if you were in Tom Ryan's shoes right now, what would you do with this situation?
Well, I'm not going to tell Tom Ryan what to do other than to say that as a former president and given what I know of this area, this particular dilemma at the moment involving the two clubs cannot be solved without the GAA's involvement. Of that there is no question. And I think the GAA will get involved, will need to get involved and will get involved, because it has, the GAA in fairness, and Tom Ryan in particular, has been most helpful in sorting out issues with clubs around the country over the past 10 years or more that got into a lot of financial difficulties. A lot of people might know that, but he has done superb work there. So I don't think he's oblivious to the challenges that are facing here, and I think he will face up to it. He's only a few short weeks in the job, so he needs a little bit of time, and he needs to be cut a bit of slack on that. But I think it will be sorted in time from a GAA perspective. But I mean, the bottom line is that if this planning is sent out draft to Board Pleanála, and if Board Pleanála give the approval to this, it may very well be something that will cause a lot of distress in this area, and I think there will be an awful lot of anger in this area if such a development takes place, because the bottom line is this area simply cannot afford to lose green space. It's already looking at trying to develop space on the other side of the canal in Trees' Gardens as well, which will be a multi-sports complex, which we're involved in talking to Dublin City Council at the moment as well. I mean, that is absolutely needed. There's a huge amount of kids here. You heard teachers from some of the local schools talking tonight about the lack of green space that they have. Their kids are playing in their sport on concrete, which is not fair. It's not fair at all. So in terms of the social development of those kids, the healthy development of those kids, in terms of all the other attributes that sport will bring to make them better citizens of this country, they just need green space to be able to enjoy themselves.
Yeah, Nicky Brennan there speaking to me last night at Griffith College at the public meeting around defending green space in Dolphin Park, organised by Kevin's GAA. It's a story we're going to follow up on. JJ O'Mahony there, who we heard from first, doing fantastic work on the matter. We await with bated breath to hear what the GAA have to say about this, because it is about time that we hear the official response from Tom Ryan. He has been in the job for long enough now for that free pass to have expired at this point. We need to hear from the GAA ASAP. Are they going to intervene? Are they going to stop the development of these lands in Dolphin Park, which would stop the opportunity for kids in Kevin's GAA in one of the most disadvantaged areas in Ireland to continue to play GAA Gaelic games? Well, we wait to see. It is up to the GAA to actually utilise their power here to stop this, because it is a property developer and the Christian Brothers are going to profit in part from this. It needs a heavy political figure, which can be Tom Ryan. Even better, it can be a Shane Ross or potentially even a Leo Varadkar to step in here and say, listen, this thing cannot happen. In fact, we need to go the other way when it comes to green spaces in this part of Dublin.
All right, coming up tonight on the radio show, Tom Parson on the horrific injury that he suffered against Galway, Wednesday Night Rugby, and the football show with Kevin Kilban. That's live on News Talk from 7 o'clock this evening. Tomorrow morning from 7:45, Donica Boyle's going to join us in studio. Owen is swanning around playing FIFA in Manchester. Looking forward to the weekend's GAA, and we're going to have a corner forward masterclass with Colin Cooper and James O'Donoghue. Not bad. See you tomorrow.
OTB AM.
In association with Air. Get Air Sport free with Air Broadband.